Hello and welcome to Start the Beat with Sykes. My name is Sykes and this is my podcast. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank everyone who checked out the last episode. If you're one of those people, I hope you enjoyed the conversation and thanks so much for coming back. But for everyone out there who's new to the show, welcome. Feel free to make yourselves at home. And as always, there's beer, soda, water, coffee in the fridge. Cheers to everyone out there on the internet. While I would agree with whoever is telling you to play more shows, I think it is important. I think it's also important to not do it until you feel like you're 100% ready to be putting yourself out there all the time. Because a lot of if you're not ready for it, you're going to get overwhelmed or burned out, or it's just not going to be a positive experience. I think a lot of times artists kind of rush or force themselves to perform shows when they're not they might be ready in terms of talent and skill, but there's a whole nother mental component to performing live that I don't think a lot of people tend to talk about or even think about, where it's really stressful and kind of exhausting putting yourself out there on a consistent basis and playing shows and booking shows and trying to do all that stuff. It's a lot of work. It's a whole nother can of worms.
And I'm anticipating it's going to be that way for me, but I mean, I kind of take it similar to when you first go into the studio. That's one of the things you really don't think about when you start making music. You take into consideration that you want to have good beats and get a place to record your vocals good, but you actually don't realize how much time and effort you should also really put into the mixing and mastering. You really do discover once you really get into music how much just as equally important that is, because it's okay, I could have the greatest song in the world, I could have a kick-ass hook, great punchlines and everything like that, but if it's not mixed and mastered right, it almost doesn't matter. It takes away from it so much.
Totally.
So I kind of relate to that, and I understand that that's going to be something that as you said, a lot of people don't take that in consideration, and that's a whole nother thing you have to absorb. But
and just performing live, it's a whole nother animal. If you're not gonna be a rapper that just raps on top of their backtracks, if you actually want to fucking perform, I don't know very many rappers that practice live sets. Bands practice and then they get on a stage and they're ready to go. I've played with countless rappers that do not practice, and whenever they perform, it's fucking blatantly obvious that they have never tried to practice. And I get
their voice doesn't seem as warmed up or anything. It's not the same.
It's there's no working on your stage, having energy. There's another thing too with rappers sometimes that will sacrifice talent for just having too much energy. They're just yelling the whole time. They're huffing and puffing and out of breath. And it's this just looks ridiculous. You got to learn how to maintain your breath control and actually perform the things that you're writing appropriately, so people can get an idea of what your music is. Be audible. You want people to understand what you're saying. It's rap. That's the whole fucking point.
Exactly.
And it's an interesting thing, but it's a whole nother part of your brain that you have to work. And if you're in your 30s and you don't have the time,
your late 30s, that's what I'm in.
You don't have the time to be fucking rehearsing all the time. And it's what am I going to do? Am I going to go to the studio this week, or I'm going to practice my songs? If I'm playing a show,
I figured out a way to do both. Okay. I actually do both. So, I mean, I've taken practicing, and that's something I've been doing for a long time now, because that was another thing I heard from other people. You should try to practice. You should try to learn, breath control. And
well, that's great.
Also learning how to really talk to people, because it's more than just a microphone. You have to be able to use your hands and your body language and anything, and get people to really kind of lose themselves in what you're saying, so they can kind of forget about their surroundings around them and really kind of take the ride with you.
Now, I think it could be also if you are an artist in a particular genre of music, like a horrorcore, right? There's somewhat of a spectacle to this and the character that is Labrynthine, right?
Yeah.
So, in a state, and because when I'm talking with you face to face, you're a super nice guy. Could tell that you're a lot of fun to be around. I am not.
You're warm in my heart right now.
I'm not intimidated by you at all.
No, I don't know how to take that one.
But it's like you just seem like you're like a wholesome guy, right?
Yeah.
But your music paints the picture of a very intimidating person, which is intentional.
Yeah.
I would imagine, right? There's a character and you're telling stories and narratives that are not wholesome. It's a dark place where you're taking people. So in a live environment, how do you balance like you as a normal human being versus like this storyteller and like communicating with the crowd as a storyteller? Because you can't be all like dark, scary, stellar storytelling in between songs. Like, hey, how's everybody doing? I hope you're having a good time.
You know who I've seen do that is this Slayer. When I've seen Slayer,
Sure.
after they'll do like Dead Skin Mask or something like that, and then he'd walk up to the microphone, put his hands behind his back. Hey, kid, thanks for coming out tonight. We're really enjoying you being here.
Well,
and I'm like,
that's fucking Slayer.
What?
They could get away with that
You're
shit.
Slayer.
So, like, what is your approach to that in terms of like, maintaining like the character in public? I don't even know if you consider it a character or a storyteller or you ever think about that? You had to have thought about this.
I definitely do. And I think it's also kind of an element of why a lot of people don't take horrorcore seriously as art, like other forms of hip hop. I think out of all the subgenres of hip hop, it's probably the closest one that you would compare to like pro wrestling.
Sure.
Pro wrestling, people don't look at as a sport or you need any athleticism. They look at it like, oh, it's all acting. It's all predetermined. It's, choreographed. But a lot of you don't really take into account like the physicality and the toll it can take on your body, but also that it's about being a performer and it's about touching your audience and also telling your story, because a lot of wrestlers will say that they are just, their character that they play is always them times like 10. It is really who they are.
Yeah.
But they kind of like turn it up like 1,000%. And so I think that's why a lot of people don't really look at horrorcore seriously. I think they look at it like it's pro wrestling. And yeah, when you're on stage or when you're behind the microphone, you're portraying a character. And of course, like most people, like comparable to wrestling, there's kayfabe. If you're not familiar with that, that's the idea of like, you don't really let people know that this is a show, or that this is all predetermined, or this is not really who I am. And that's not saying you're being fake. You're just, like I said, you're just turning up the U meter about 1,000% because you're trying to get that crowd's attention or your audience's attention. You're trying to bring them in. Yeah. So that's how I really look at it. So I definitely find a lot of similarities between that there.
Yeah. So whenever you're playing a set in between songs, you just kind of like turn your like you're about to like cut a sick wrestling promo.
Well, that's the thing. I have yet to perform live. So I look at it like I want to be prepared for it. But at the same time, I'm trying to draw you in. But I'm also not trying to say that, this isn't really part of who I am.
Got it. Got it. Totally.
People don't think horrorcore you can have any poetic value in.